Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Shanadra Washington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. Where have you landed? It's the Her Voice Shines podcast. I am your fabulous host, streaming from the rainy, wet, nasty, flooding place of Houston, Texas on today. I don't know when you'll see this, but today I've been really tested. But I am so happy to have my guest here. I will look at all of her business and she's going to see. I got some stuff to ask her. She's a fabulous, fabulous lady, but she's here. She's going to come to the stage and do the normal drill, which is tell us her name, where she's streaming from. We get the magic of her story without any further waiting time. Here's this very fabulous guest for today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Shanadra. This is amazing. So my name is Maria C. Palmer. I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I'm streaming live with you today from outside of New York City in New Jersey, in the middle of the woods. A little bit about me and about my story. I grew up in one of America's top Italian restaurants in the early 80s through the early 2000s. It was in a very unlikely place, a little town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. And if McKees Rocks sounds somewhat familiar to you, it may, because 2 football seasons ago, Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills collapsed on the field. And he is, in fact, also from McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. And his mother's daycare that he raised close to, I think, $9 or $10 million for sits across the street from what once was my family's restaurant. And my journey is a very interesting one. Just about everything that's happened to me has happened to me through grace, serendipity, and kind of mistake in a way. And one of the things that I always say is sometimes the worst day of your life becomes your passion around life. And for me, whenever I was 20 years old, my family's restaurant was doing fantastic. We had awards, we had celebrities, everybody that was anybody in Pittsburgh and beyond were coming into our doors and enjoying a meal with us. And that all changed pretty suddenly. One day, whenever I was 20 years old and I was in between jobs and the federal government knocked on my door looking for my father, and he was the subject of a federal grand jury investigation, which really changed our lives. It was a 3-year pretty invasive investigation, and he eventually pled guilty to tax evasion charges and went to prison. And our lives have never really truly been the same, but that day has led me onto a path of working in the nonprofit world, led me onto a path of writing this best-selling book in my dad's voice, and now led me to a path where I am able to tour all around the country, cooking, doing book talks, pop-up restaurants. I'm working on a new book that should be kind of coming out soon. We're in development for a documentary. So it's incredibly exciting, and I feel incredibly blessed to be here today. So thank you.
Absolutely. The first thing is, like she says, she's sitting in the middle of the forest. Y'all look at her background. She's legit.
I'm in the woods.
When you said, I said, oh yeah, she's for real about that. She's for real in the middle of the woods with the background to prove it. That was so funny to me. But that made me laugh. I'm so happy that you're here. And it's very interesting, Miss Palmer, that this past 6 months or so, I've probably been engulfed with incarceration. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. It's really changed my life. I did not expect to have really connection with it as I was doing, even still working to help someone overcome some situations and kind of learned about the system. I'm forever changed. So I think the path that I'm on is no coincidence that people have these touch points to some of the things that I'm working on, because I am really open to the calling of hearing, some stories that don't necessarily parallel to mine, but some type of way have crossed into my world. Before we get there, I want to start with this, and then we're going to start working this journey. Something I read that you said rejection was my middle name. You said this, and I went and found it. You said,
sorry, you cut out. What was my middle name? Rejection?
There could have been like a notification or something that made me. Right.
I think you said, is it rejection was my middle name? Yes, it's still.
You
might even be my first name. But yes, rejection. Rejection is my middle name, unfortunately. Yes.
You said it. I went and found it. You said, but the but was resilience became my path to success.
Yes.
Tell me about maybe a pivotal moment when rejection tested you the most, because I am also too, even though I'm doing my work, I still get tons of rejections, Maria, tons of it. So I want you to tell me about maybe a pivotal moment where that rejection just stood out the most, and basically how are you transforming that into the resilience? So let's start there.
I think it actually started when I was younger. One of the wonderful and also kind of the double-edged sword of growing up in the restaurant business is that you essentially grow up with the public. You're working for the public. You're dealing with customers every day. You're dealing with some of the most lovely people that you'd ever meet in your life. And then the flip side of that as well. And so I think from a very early age, I was taught that, not everybody's going to like you or embrace you, but you just try to be your best self, and you have to be that yes for yourself. You can't wait for other people to go ahead and validate you, because sometimes that's just not going to happen. And I think that the most pivotal moment, at least on this writing journey, was whenever we finished our manuscript, which was the summer of 2020, quite possibly the worst time ever to finish a manuscript or to write a book. And we were getting ready to shop this to agents. And for those of you who aren't really familiar with the book process, which I wasn't familiar before I went through this. So if you're going to go the traditional route, where you're going to try to find a publisher that's going to take on your work and then actually publish it, most of that is done through an agent. And an agent is basically a person who is your advocate to the publisher, a person that's going to take your manuscript, your proposal, and then share and sell that idea. And whenever we started to do this, agents are incredibly selective and picky, and we are in a category, and I say we because my writing partner was my former AP English teacher eons of years ago. But we are in a category that competes with politicians, that competes with celebrities, that competes with reality stars even. Everybody and anyone who the public wants to know about more than us. And so whenever we sent out query letters, we sent them to 265 agents. Out of those 265 agents, over 100 of them said thanks, but no thanks. About 120, 140 of them said nothing, absolutely nothing. And I didn't know much about this concept of ghosting. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's basically when you reach out to somebody, you send them an email, you give them a phone call, and then you never hear back from them. And you're left wondering, is it something that I did? Is it something that I said? Is it something that I should have said and didn't say? But it's really almost, in my opinion, it's worse than getting a no. And then 17 people said that they were willing to see more, and only one person decided to take us on. And when that one agent took us on, the path to publishing was much of the same. Publishers said, yeah, this is a really interesting story, but it's a regional story at best. Anybody that's outside of Pittsburgh is not going to be interested in this. Anybody who is interested in food, they're going to gravitate towards books like Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential and Stanley Tucci's Taste. It can't sit on the shelves with these books. And I heard what they were saying, but I also knew deep down inside that as a country at that point in 2020, we were becoming very divisive, very divided. It was your way, my way, or the highway. And I knew that this book that we had worked on for 17 years had hints of humanity and duality. Basically, in order for us to be human, we have these wonderful things about us, right? And then we have these other like rougher parts to us. But the whole humanity is showing those vulnerable pieces as well, which is what we have done in the book. And I just felt like the greater message was something that this society and world needed as a whole at the time. And so I pushed on even throughout all of the no's and into the publishing process. It was said at the time that if a book was on submission for more than 6 months, it was essentially dead to the water. This book was on submission for 13 months. Absolutely nobody was interested in it. And it came at a hard time because this was, my dad's goal was to have his life story published, and he was not well at the time. So he had gone through major open heart surgery, major back surgery, not one, but 2 kidney transplants. He was in the hospital for 3 different life altering infections, all of which are deadly. It was a miracle that he actually made it through any of those. And the only thing that kept him going was the idea that this book could potentially come out. And so he would ask me every day during that time, Maria, what do you think? Is anybody interested in publishing the book? And I knew that no one was, but I couldn't tell him that because I felt like that would essentially extinguish his fire. So what I said instead was, I'm going to look here. I'm going to join this group. I'm going to talk to these people. I'm going to network a little bit more with these people. And I just really never accepted the fact that this could potentially be underground and never become anything. And I just kept on pushing until one day of August of 2022, we received an email from our publisher, and I thought it was a scam. And he said that he was really interested in the book. And, honestly, the rest is history. And I, always tell people one little piece on resilience, which I think is really important. And I gave you the stats of how much rejection I've received on this book. After the book came out, for the first 2 weeks following the release of the book, we were the #1 culinary memoir on all of Amazon. And #2 was Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential, and #3 was Stanley Tucci's Taste. And I like to share that with folks because I like people to know that we are our own biggest limiters, right? What we say about ourselves, that we can't do something, the negative chatter that we have, it absolutely has an effect on us. Just like if we believe in ourselves, if we keep on persevering, even whenever we're stuck in the mud, eventually it's not the smartest person in the room that's going to be the most successful. It's, in my opinion, the one with the most resiliency.
Beautiful, beautiful segment. And a model of resilience that need to be followed, because it's that internal voice that says, I don't care what these people are saying. I don't care what these numbers are saying. I don't care because this person got more credentials. These people got a bigger platform, that this thing here isn't big, that this thing here isn't viable, that this thing here can't change lives. So I think an interesting place in that was keeping your father's hope alive while seeing so much rejection. Because when you said that, he's asking questions and things of that sort, but you're not seeing anything moving. So it's an interesting place to be to tell somebody like, okay, just using this to kind of, keep the tide going. But in actuality, there's really nothing happening. But to stay through and push through that is really what resilience is. And I give you kudos for that. And I'm so proud of you not giving up, you not throwing in the towel and saying like, I'm going to ride this thing out. I just put yesterday, I think my post was that, people will say the process didn't work, but in actuality, they never worked the process. They never put in those seeds of resiliency to make that thing get off the ground. So I'm incredibly proud of you.
Oh,
let me ask you this, Maria, because from this, restaurant side of things, here are all these celebrities, here's all this splits and fame, and then now facing incarceration. Tell me about, that's a contrasting experience. That's totally contrast to me. It's like it's a total opposite, polar opposites. Tell me about those contrasting experiences. How did that shape your identity and worldview? Because I have now went through several contrasting experiences where one thing is this way, and then at the drop of a dime it's this way. And when I get those polar opposite contrasts, my worldview shifts. I've had a lot of worldview shifts in my lifetime. Tell me about that and really how that expanded you, probably even in empathy.
Yes, and you hit the nail on the head with that. Empathy, if you've never gone through something, it's very easy to be that person that's throwing stones, right? It's very easy to say, well, if that were me, I would have done it this way, or what, I would have never gotten myself into that type of jam. But what we don't understand is that it's very easy to make a mistake. And, sometimes we're all human. We all make them, myself included. I make a million of them every day. But it's not about the mistakes that we make. It's about the learnings that happen as a result of those mistakes and that help us to carry on through the process. And so, one of the ways that I think this has shaped me in my adult life in particular is it's sort of shown me that even if we think we know what the ending to a story was or the why behind somebody's motivation, we don't. We really don't. And, we have to approach every situation and giving people that benefit of the doubt and, not letting people walk all over you for sure, but understanding that everybody comes with a room with their own view, and that view might be very different than the way that you grew up or the way that somebody else grew up. But it doesn't mean that it's a wrong view. It just means that different life experiences have helped to shape you as a human. And until you go through other life experiences, you're not getting those tiger stripes to kind of make you whole. And I think as much as I don't want to repeat some of those really painful things that have happened to my family and I think that in the long run, it's been very helpful. I liken it, I'm also a really big yogi, really into breath work and meditation and also practicing yoga. And, the thing about it that's so simple, it just comes back to your breath and grounding yourself. And I think that no matter what situation you're in, however complicated it might be, whether you're facing family incarceration or an investigation or something that seems so overwhelming to you, if you can just ground yourself, learn how to breathe, take a couple minutes, eat an elephant by kind of the small bites and put one foot in front of another, eventually even this really crappy stuff does tend to get better. And there does tend to be a greater life lesson in the process. And I think for me, it took me actually working with Get on the Bus, which is the program in California that took children to visit their incarcerated parents for Mother's Day and Father's Day. It took me learning from the families that we were serving to learn how to get past my own guilt, shame, inability to get over, something that kind of happened in the past. It took them telling me how to do that. And sometimes, in life, people drop into our lives to give us the skills that we need in order to get out of a challenge that we're in. And I really do feel like it's made me a richer person. It's made me a more grounded person. It's made me a much more empathetic person. It's helped to define my career path. I work in the nonprofit world, and every day I work in Paterson, New Jersey. And every day I try to help make people's lives a little bit easier with basic needs. So making sure people have enough to eat, making sure that people have safe place to stay and to sleep at night, making sure that people have job skills, making sure that people have the ability. We have an AmeriCorps program, so making sure that people have the ability to get some job experience in the nonprofit world, making sure that kids can arrive safely to school and to learn and to overcome whatever barriers are going on at home and in their neighborhood. And that to me is incredibly fulfilling. And I don't know, maybe I would have chosen this job and career path without everything that's happened to me. But I think the fact that all of this has happened to me has really paved the path of the way that I want to live my life and the people that I want to surround myself with on a daily basis, for sure.
Yeah, the last part is so good because I always wonder, like, if the things hadn't turned, the tides hadn't shifted, would I have really landed to this place of what I think is so much freedom now, right? So much ability to go out and learn and bring stories together and really, really live, experiences that I may never walk, with my own feet, but I am deeply connected to, because number one, I've been able to sit with people, and then it's like light bulb then turn off, and then I can see everything connected to these particular situations. Because let me tell you this, incarceration on families is devastating. I have experienced and talked to several people, even women inside the cells now, that have children out there, and that ripple effect of what's happening because of the absent parent and the system and all these different things. I'm telling you, it can really have a detrimental impact. And I wasn't going to go here, but when you were talking about it, I kind of thought about this. So from your perspective, what changes would you like to see in society's maybe perception of families affected by incarceration? Because I still don't think people just get it. What would you think about if you could change that perception?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that actually shocked me when I started working with families of people who are incarcerated, specifically at first, Get on the Bus was specifically a women's program. So it started by a delegation of Catholic women were going up and they were going to volunteer in the prisons. And one of the things that they thought that they would do is they would go up and go inside of the prisons and visit some of the women. And whenever the founder of Get on the Bus, Sister Suzanne Jabro, came and told the women, she was really excited because the women tend to never receive visitors. Men receive a lot of visitors, but women, for one reason or another, and a lot of it is due to whenever they are incarcerated, their mothers end up becoming the caregivers of their children. And their mothers are already overwhelmed. They can't afford the long journey to get to the prisons, and also not only just the money that it costs to get there with gas, but once you step inside a prison, you're not bringing anything except for yourself. And sometimes they're even not wanting certain parts of you to come in because you're going through metal detectors and taking things out of your pockets, and they're doing all kinds of stuff. So you have to, buy snacks and food and all of that, and everything is overpriced whenever you get inside of a prison, for sure. But one of the things that I was shocked at, not only the fact that women do not receive visitors in the same way that men do, but most of the women inside of the system in the 90 percentile, I'm not sure exactly what the percentage is right now, because it's been a while since I worked directly inside of the prisons. But whenever I was there, oh gosh, what was that, in early 2000s, it was well over 90%, if not approaching 95% of women who are incarcerated are victims of some sort of abuse. And, mostly abuse as a child, whether it be physical abuse, definitely social, emotional abuse, a lot of times sexual abuse as well. And when you learn that fact, I do think that it changes your perception of the people that you're dealing with. And also, too, many women who are incarcerated because of the crime that a man who they may have trusted committed. Many people are accomplices to crimes who have no idea. They get in a car and, their boyfriend pulls over and goes into a mini mart and robs it at gunpoint. Well, guess what? their boyfriend's in trouble, but they're also an accomplice. And so they're serving long sentences. And these are already women who have been wounded and abused their entire lives. And now they're being incarcerated for crimes that they may or may not have a lot to have had the foresight to even know that these things were going on. I mean, of course, there are some women who are committing crimes for sure, but a vast majority of the women that I've met on the inside are women that were very wounded individuals and went through, a huge mistake or oversight, but really they needed more assistance with help with mental health. That was also something that I certainly saw. So I think if you can come from that perspective, kind of understand that storyline, it allows you to garner a lot more empathy for people, especially the women inside. And once I started to understand that, we did my old job, we did what was called crossovers, where we would come in as women from the outside and spend the day with women from the inside and talk about women's issues in particular, and what it looked like on the inside versus the outside, and how the outside women could help or assist the inside women. And, we weren't solving, the world's problems, but it sure felt like we were doing a whole heck of a lot better than we are now in this world over lunch, whenever you get a bunch of inspired women into a group and you start talking, for sure. So, that's something that I would really like other people to know, especially about women that are incarcerated, and also about the families in general. Families of the incarcerated, there are millions of people who fall into this bucket. There are people that you don't even know who have incarcerated family members. I can't tell you how many people who are my personal friends who read the book and then have reached out to me and said, hey, I never told anyone, but my mom was in jail whenever I was growing up. Or I never told anybody, but my great aunt is now being investigated. Or I never told anybody, but, my boyfriend in college got into a lot of trouble. And, it definitely affects all of us. We just don't know how that it might, affect people if it's not right in front of your face. But just to lead with that empathy and knowing that, it wasn't always somebody's intention to go out and commit a crime. Sometimes people are just incredibly wounded or, victims of circumstance, for sure. And to have some empathy with that.
I think listen to that, my heart broke a little bit more from the work and stuff that I've done, these past 6 months, because knowing that many of the women, at least that I've spoken to, really hinged on what you said about them not being the main suspect, them being tied to it from, the boyfriend or, the family member or whatever, and them not even really understanding their full role in that. The other part of it that's been incredibly hard to digest is the cost of being incarcerated. You say, what do you mean, Shanadra? It costs to call them, it costs to text them, it costs to feed them, it costs all these different things that people just don't really have those resources. I was just blown away about the money system behind incarceration. I'm just going to be completely transparent with you, Maria. That shocked me.
Yep.
It shocked me. The amount of it's an industry. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an industry. And it was something that when I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff just adds up, just, speaking on the phones and, the texting system, and then overpriced food. It's all crappy food anyway. And it's like, 3 times the price of what you would buy in the store. It's like an entire system. And I don't think people talk about it nearly enough. Like I told you in the segment before, that I am forever changed by it. I said, look, I've worked with people who probably should have been behind bars and are not. Let me just be completely clear. My lens of empathy is forever expanded because of my incarceration. And I also, too, I want to let you know that you are a warrior because you have been able to do, you really are. I went and looked at all your information and I've already got to purchase the book. So, hey.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I love reading the book. I love to get on the bus. I love the aspect of it because you're making it really full circle because there's your family's experience, but then also too, because of my family experience that has changed me, I am now putting that into advocacy work.
Yep.
That is what builds legacy. People part that builds.
I need you in my pocket all the time. That is just,
that's the part that builds legacy. I just, let me tell you something, Maria. I have ran from this space for so long. So when I do this is my work.
I love it.
This is my true work. You see the branding and things of that nature, but I tell my guests when I show up here, I honor your time and I honor your story. This is not just like any of your podcasts. We're just going to go and tick the box. How many? No. We do our work. We talk about it, and we put it in the earth in a way that it can create a ripple effect. That is the goal of the show.
I love it, and you're doing it. You're doing it
when we do that. I want to ask you this, and we're going to go over to rapid fire. But I want you to talk about this because you have all your family stuff, right? And then you're putting the story out there, and then you kind of want to balance privacy. But sometimes what happens is that because people are so afraid to speak about the thing that's so, hurtful or just so embarrassing, they kind of don't know where to maybe draw the line between privacy, but also to just getting free. Talk about that. How do you balance that? This is not about telling every little crying detail or something, that we need to put out there, but there is a power in telling our story. There's a power in storytelling, but also to a place where we can keep something sacred. I want you to talk about that a little bit because there's so many people still hiding behind the embarrassment or the shame.
Yeah, you know what? That's the ticket. And that's why it took me 17 years to write this book. Like I said, it was really easy to write all of the wonderful things that my dad and my family had done for the McKees Rocks community. And there were many wonderful things. I mean, he completely changed the economy of the community, embraced the people inside of the community, not only as customers, but he hired many young people, all of which today are incredibly successful in their own right. And many of them, did not have father figures or supportive parents in their lives before they came and started working at the restaurant. So really that was incredible. But yes, it is really hard to talk about the hard parts. And let me be completely honest with you. So whenever we went through everything that we did as a family, it was really challenging. And like I had mentioned at the top of the hour, I moved away 3,000 miles away to Los Angeles where nobody knew who I was or my story because I wanted to hide and I wanted to be anonymous. And it really took that healing of me working for Get on the Bus and learning some of the families and having them teach me those lessons of resiliency and overcoming shame and unconditional love and what it means to make a mistake and get past it and go on with your life. But even with all of that, whenever my dad came out of prison, there was a big party and everybody who was anybody in his life came. It was a big barbecue at, a local park pavilion, and it was awesome. And there was a DJ and burgers, hot dogs, you name it, corn on the cob, all of those great things. It was a huge celebration. But during that time and also immediately afterwards, that was the end. We had never spoken about the fact that he was incarcerated again. It just never really came up as a family. I don't know, in a way, whenever I started working on the book, it was even hard for me to go there because we hadn't talked about it in so long. It kind of became forced into the back of our memories because we wanted to forget, right? But one of the things that was really incredibly powerful and therapeutic was bringing it back on the table and understanding that, first of all, nowadays, everything is Googleable. And what I mean by that is that if you are going to write about your story in a public way and you have some skeletons, even if they're very small, in your closet and you do not mention them, whenever you get on your first interview like this, guess what the host is going to bring up? All of the things that are public record that you are not willing to talk about. And whenever I explained this to my dad, whenever we were creating this book, I said, do you remember, I don't know if your listeners or you would be old enough to remember James Fry. And James Fry wrote a book years ago, whenever the Oprah show was still on the air. It was called A Million Little Pieces. And it was about his overcoming addiction. And he had a very powerful story, and it was a very well-written story. But the only problem, and after he was on the Oprah show, clearly he was the #1 New York Times bestseller, sold, probably 1 million copies of this book. But as people started to dig deeper into his story, certain things about the story were not exactly lining up. Did he have a powerful story without embellishing on it? Absolutely. But he took some creative liberties to make things appear that they were a little tougher for him than maybe they would. And whenever the news media got wind of that, guess what happened to James Fry and A Million Little Pieces? He went from being the #1 book to everybody thinking that he was a joke and a liar and kind of the laughing stock of the literary world. And I don't know that he ever really completely rebounded from that in the literary sense. And I'm not sure if that were me, if I would ever be able to rebound from that in the public sense either. But whenever I explained that to my dad, and I said, Dad, we have an opportunity here. We cannot change what happened about our story. If you Google my dad's name, Joseph Costanzo Jr., and you Google federal prison or federal investigation, guess what? You're going to get a lot of hits. My dad is pled guilty to a federal crime, which was tax evasion. He went to prison, and that's part of our story, but that's not the whole story. What you have the liberty of whenever you're writing a book or whenever you're on an interview, you're able to tell people not what happened. People can find out on the internet what happened. You're able to tell them the story of why things happened the way that they did. And whenever you're able to craft things with your own pen and to be honest and objective, I think that is what constitutes the story that people want to read. Because like you had alluded to earlier, everybody goes through some part of their life where they wish, all right, I just wish I could press rewind on this or reset, or I wish that I didn't make this choice or go down this certain path. It was a mistake. So that is a normal thing to kind of happen to individuals. And so I think that was my most important piece, is whenever we started to tell the full story, and it started to happen in a balanced way. And, that became the thing that people love so much about this book is, yes, it's about all the successes that we've had. And it's about this incredible underdog story that may never happen again in the world that we live in. But it's also about overcoming sort of the darkest time that we've had as a family and what we've learned through that. And I think that that's what has made people resonate most with this story.
I got to tell you, I'm ready to read it. I am like once I'm ready to read, I cut everything off and do it. I mean, I was in 2024, I was reading like a book every couple of days or so. I need to get better because this has been the thing I haven't gotten to read as much. But I'm telling you guys, I want you to go and get this book because I feel, a lot of people come on here with books, but I never stop in the middle of the show and like be a strong. And I haven't even read it. I mean, I read the synopsis, but I think it's going to be a good one for me. I think it's going to be a good one for me in terms of perspective and, of course, enhancing that empathy, but also just from your lens and speaking to so many. And it's kind of funny because I late last week, I have spoken to daughters of well-known public figures, 3 of them last week. We don't want to release it yet because I'm recording them in a few days here. If I said their father's name, you would most definitely know who their fathers are. They're well-known, big-time public figures. And it was definitely something in there for me that felt so good. So I got chills because speaking to you, it takes me back to them, this piece of you that's redefining the legacy a little bit. Yeah, we know what happened, and yeah, we know that was the story, but they let Maria stay alive and they let her get something in her spirit, and she was able to shift it. That's why this platform of Her Voice Shines matters so much. So when I got you on and I talked to those other ladies last week, I was like, you guys are really, and all of them. There's something about they have their father's name, good, bad, and in between, but it's something about them specifically. And there are more children. There are other children in these families. It's something about them specifically that adds a special piece of layer to the legacy. So I am not surprised at all that we're having this conversation today because of the flow in the earth and where I am today. What I am speaking is manifesting. I want you guys to catch this very clearly. What I am speaking is manifesting. There has not been any chance of guess. There has not been any chance of flow. I just want to honor you for being here and confirming that the work of this type of platform, it matters.
100% it matters. And I think it's so important, no matter who you are, and you're out there listening, your story also matters. And you might think, oh, I'm just a boring person, or I'm not doing anything. You're doing good work. You are important. You have a purpose. And whenever we're able to listen to our inner soul and tell us, this is what I should be doing right now. And that's whenever you're going to have, in essence, a rebirth, and you're going to come alive. And it might seem completely silly and crazy to people. I know whenever I first told people that I was writing a book, a couple of people laughed at me, and even agents that I met with totally laughed at me and said, you're not only wasting my time, but I feel bad because you're wasting your own time. And whenever you have that fire inside of you, whenever you are so passionate about what you're doing and you love what you're doing so much, it never feels like work. I could do this. I could sit and talk to you all day. And it is so life-giving. So that is what I wish for all of your listeners. I wish that every single one of you finds something in your life. Maybe it's from one of the low points in your life, something that you were able to manifest and overcome, and use that good for other people. Speak your truth. Love who you are and embrace it. And you know what? You dance your own little funky dance in the corner, and you don't worry about who's watching you or who else is listening. You just be you at all times. And, that's whenever I'm showing up at the Girl Scout meeting, at the class mom, on my interview with you today, I just come as me. That's who I am. And when you can authentically be yourself, there is no better place in the universe. There's no more giving and wonderful feeling that you're going to be embodied with passion. It's just a beautiful thing.
I love it. Now, I want to make sure we get a clean segment, Maria, just to give your contact information. I'll come off the screen, just give us where we can find the books, mention the names of those books, and give us anything, websites, socials, whatever you want to provide for contact. Go ahead and do that now.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening today. If you would like to connect with me, the best way to do that is to go on to my website, www.mariacpalmer, just like my name, there in the left-hand corner, .com. And on that website, there are a couple of different tabs that you might want to check out. If you would like to check out any of our upcoming events, we do have an events tab, which lists everything that is upcoming, and also videos and photos of all of our past events, in addition to some of the cook and book experiences that I've described here on the show, which are 1.5 hour cooking experiences, 1.5 book talks. We also have pop-up restaurants. outside of Pittsburgh a few times a year. We do book talks, both live and virtually at libraries, you name it, women's clubs, all over the place. And so we would love to help you. If your book club would love to read On the Rocks, we would love to be a part of it and be a part of that discussion for you. So certainly do reach out. We also have a media page, and our media page has all of the lovely media appearances that we've had as a result of this book, and even beforehand. And the show today will be on that page as well. So if you want to check out some other interviews with us, please go ahead and do so. And just some fun things that are coming up for sure, in addition to On the Rocks. The Prima Donna story, which can be found wherever books are sold. We also are going to be having a narrative cookbook come onto the scene. Hopefully, we're working on contracts as we speak, but hopefully I will have news in a few weeks here, but look for that sometime in 2026. And we are in the early stages of development for a narrative documentary. So also be looking out for that as well. So thank you so much. And thanks again for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now we're going to do a one round of rapid fire. I have 10 pre-prepared questions for you. And this is just the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe a word. Listen, Maria, I tell my guests you're coming to work now.
Okay.
You only get a word or a sentence. You don't get a whole lot of,
Well, keep in mind, I do work from home and my dogs are my best friends. So if I answer any of these strangely, that's probably why. Okay, we're ready.
Number one, the first dish you ever cooked.
Oh, gosh. My mom's Rice Krispie chicken.
And did it come out like mom's?
No.
I just can't ask. I don't know. Now, this may be your own, but a book that profoundly impacted you.
Tattoos on the Heart by Father Gregory Boyle.
Oh, okay, haven't heard that one.
He is a Jesuit priest outside of LA, and he has created an entire life of social justice and is committed to taking gang members off of the street and giving them jobs. His whole tagline is jobs, not jails. And he's profoundly, in my opinion, probably one of the most important people this century to kind of pay attention to. So yes.
Okay, I have to write that one down too. Tell me about the most memorable guest for you at the Prima Donna.
Well, keep in mind, I was very young, so it's just mostly all of the hearsay because I was 4 when my dad got into the restaurant. I didn't start working there until I was 20, but I would say probably one of the most memorable guests for my dad was Danny Aiello. Played in the Godfather movie, and he was in Pittsburgh filming The Cemetery Club at the time, but he had so many parallels to my dad. Found his passion later in life, was a bus driver in New York City, very cool, down to earth Italian guy, really jived with my dad.
Love it. Favorite comfort food?
Oh gosh, anything carbs. Sorry. I got a gut to show that too. I'm working on.
One word to describe your father.
Gregarious.
That's a good one. Give me a song, or maybe it's not a song, maybe it's a mantra that encapsulates your life journey. Give me something that you think about. If your life could be a song or a mantra or maybe even a book, what would that be?
Oh gosh, there's a Shinedown song that's called, I think, Dysfunctional You. And it's such a beautiful written song. I think that he talks about his journey with mental health and specifically overcoming suicide. Now, I have not been in that situation, but I can definitely understand the depths of kind of some of those low points that he was hitting, and how he learned to really embrace and love himself, not only for all of the beautiful things, but also the things that make us dysfunctionally who we are.
That's beautiful. Tell me a dream dinner guest, past or present.
Dream dinner guest. Honestly, I love sitting with Sister Suzanne Jabro, who's the founder of Get on the Bus. She is huge into reflections, and she makes us live a life of gratitude. And I think that that's why she's still 80 years old and trailblazing out there, making it happen.
I need to embody that. I need to be 80 years old, still trailblazing, still showing up, and still really, really putting some good stuff in the earth. I'm gonna ask you this, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want the biggest lesson that you've learned from writing that memoir.
Oh gosh. If somebody tells you that it's easy, don't listen to them. Definitely, learning about being your only yes and a sea of no, for sure.
You've touched on this in the previous segment, but I was going to ask you the next goal on the horizon. We know it with the documentary, but I just want you to say it again because it's very intentional, because we have to speak it so we can manifest it. So the next goal on the horizon for you.
Yes. Next two things on the horizon for me: narrative cookbook, because everybody's asking and I listen to the universe. And definitely this narrative-driven documentary. Really excited about that too.
And the last one is just a place that feels like home, that really may not be home, but what's somewhere that always just feels like home?
For me, it's always Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, McKees Rocks, man. Whenever I drive through those tunnels, that, even though it's not my physical home right now, that will always be my home.
I love it. Now, this is the part in our podcast where we choose our guests for final thoughts. I asked them to give us something, to give us some really good parting words for the space. It's something that captures the essence of the Maria Palmer. I'm going to carry over to you for final thoughts, and I'll be over to close the show after that. So over to you for final thoughts.
All right. So my final thought is, no matter what you're going through now in life, things are going to get better. You will get through it, and stay the course. Believe in yourself. Think positive, and great things are to come for all of you. Thank you.
Now, listen, I told Maria to come hang out with me for 30 minutes. We've been on here for 52 minutes. Don't even feel like it.
I know. I could do another 52.
we had such a great time. But I tell you guys, miraculous things happen when you let your voice shine. And like the old people in church say, I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. And we'll be back with another amazing woman in no time in the Her Voice Shines podcast. Until then, I love you, and we're out. Bye-bye.
Oh.